Do you want to stay more focused on the right goals in your life, or even just figure out what the right goals are for you? Do you want clarity? Do you want better work-life balance? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Success Through Failure.
Welcome to the Success Through Failure podcast, the show that reveals failure as your path to success. You'll listen to intriguing interviews with some of the most successful people on the planet and learn how their failures became a launchpad for success and how yours can too. Here's your host, former Division I All-American wrestler, former Division I head coach, speaker, and personal coach, Jim Harshaw.
Welcome to another episode of Success Through Failure. Today, I bring you Mark Podolsky. You feel out of balance in your life, like your family and your work are your priorities, but you don't have enough time in the day, so you're shortchanging them both? Not to mention wanting to work out more or do more of the things that you love. Are you easily distracted and you want to be able to stay more focused so you can lock in on the most important things that you know you should be doing? You want to be more consistent so you can achieve those goals that always seem just out of reach. Or maybe you feel like you just lack the motivation that it takes to get there. Or maybe you're just not clear on what the right first step actually is. Like every time you're about to take action, you doubt whether or not it's the right action or the right goal. I know the feeling. I've got a wife and 4 kids. I have a job, a rental property, this podcast, not to mention the inevitable challenges that just come up with life, like, illness and struggling family members or car trouble. I've got a lot going on. But when I was a Division I All-American athlete, I was completely locked in. I was focused. I was balanced, and I knew exactly what I wanted and the steps that I had to take to get it. But when I got into the real world, things got a lot more complex. There's just a lot more time demands. Like everything seems to be a priority. How are you supposed to figure out what's the right next step for you? Well, I've developed a system that helps you do just that. Find the balance, the clarity, the focus that you're looking for so you can take your life to the next level. So you can start seeing the dreams that are in your mind as realistic goals and have a plan to achieve them. I've opened a few spots on my calendar for free 30-minute strategy calls so you can take that first step toward the life that you've always dreamed about. Just one simple step, one small commitment that will give you huge results, a simple phone call that will leave you with a plan. If you want this life, if you want to truly have a breakthrough, claim one of the few spots open on my calendar, and I'll share with you the formula that has had people who I work with saying things like one of my recent coaching clients, Frank, who said, "My only regret is that I didn't do this 20 years ago." Or like Isaac, who said, "I love this version of myself the best, and I'll do anything to keep it going." I've got dozens more quotes like that. If you want to feel the same way, go to jimharshawjr.com/apply. That's jimharshawjr.com/apply. Armed with only $3,000, gut-wrenching fear, and absolutely no real estate experience, Mark bought his first few parcels of raw land in 2001. Today, Mark is the owner of Frontier Properties, a successful land investing company, and he's been buying and selling land full-time since 2001. And by focusing on working smart, not hard, he's completed over 5,000 land deals with an average ROI of over 300% on cash flips and over 1,000% on the deals that he sells to financing firms. Prior to his land investing success, Mark had a high-stress, what he calls soul-crushing corporate job, and he felt trapped in a state of solo-economic-dependency, meaning his income stopped as soon as he stopped working. Now, Mark teaches, coaches, and mentors others to help them achieve their financial goals. As usual, if you don't have time to listen to this entire episode or you hear something you like from Mark, but you don't have time to write it down, make sure you grab your free copy of the action plan. Just go to jimharshawjr.com/action. Mark, welcome to the show.
Oh, hey, Jim. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you made time to come on the show. And before we get into the interview, I just want to tell the listener, Mark is walking as we speak. He's got a treadmill desk. It's so cool. I've seen people with treadmill desks before. I've never actually done an interview with somebody who's on a treadmill desk. But what do you think, Mark? You like a treadmill desk?
Look, sitting's the new smoking. I love it. I love it.
I've got a stand-up desk. I stand, but I've never used a treadmill desk. But man, do I want one! So
I think you'll feel better walking, because I tried to do the stand-up thing and my feet start to hurt. So my feet don't hurt when I'm walking.
yeah, that's a good point. All right, okay.
Yeah.
Well, a little extra motivation. I've seen. Is it a DIY or did you buy it like that?
This is a Trek desk.
Okay.
And then a little treadmill underneath it. So, not I can't even change a light bulb, Jim. I'm no DIYer.
Nice. Well, I'm impressed. So, Mark, tell us about your background a little bit. Where'd you grow up? Where you from? Kind of how'd you get from there to where you're at now? Just kind of the 30,000 foot view.
Sure. I'm originally from St. Louis, and I moved. I met my wife in Kansas City. And then we moved to Scottsdale, Arizona. And I moved here for, what I thought was going to be a great job, in my first investment banking job. And I was doing mergers and acquisitions with private equity groups, mid-market stuff, 5 to 500 million enterprise value, nothing too crazy. And I was absolutely miserable. I had a 45-minute commute to work and back. I was micromanaged. I had a high stress, high pressure job. And it got so bad, Jim, that, I wouldn't get the Sunday blues anticipating Monday rolling around. I'd get the Friday blues anticipating the weekend going by really fast and having to be back at work on Monday. And so my firm hires this guy, and he's telling me that on the side, he's going to these tax deed auctions. He's buying up raw land, pennies on the dollar, and he's, flipping them online, and he's making a 300% return on his investments. Well, I'm from St. Louis. I'm from the show me state. I don't believe him, right? And so I go with him. I got $3,000 saved up for car repairs. I do exactly what he says. And I bought 10 parcels at an average price of $300. And then I did exactly what he said. I flipped them online the next week, and they all sold for an average price of over $1,200. And he was right.
Wow.
And, and for me, this is crazy because I'm looking at companies all day long, right? And a great company is 15% EBITDA margins. Great company, free cash flow.
Tell people what the EBITDA is.
So that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Just another fancy way of saying free cash flow for a company. Mm-hmm. Your average company is at 10%, and I'm looking at companies all day long less than 10%. So the fact that this thing worked, I thought, well, this is probably not going to work again. So I did it again in Arizona, where I'm from, and there's no one in the room. This is in 2000, and I bought up all these parcels of land with the profits that I made from the New Mexico auction. And on that second auction, I made over $90,000 cash in the next 6 months. So I go to my wife. I'm like, honey, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to be a full-time land investor. And she said, absolutely not. Right. So she's pregnant at the time. She said, you're not quitting your job. So I said, all right, fine. So I did it part-time for 18 months until the land investing income exceeded my investment banking income. And then I quit, and I've been doing it full-time ever since.
Wow. So this is a great get-rich-quick scheme, or what?
Well, no. Gosh, no. I wish it were. No. If you know of any, Jim, let me know.
I will. Yeah.
I don't know of any.
Yeah.
This is.
So there's real work here involved.
Slowly.
There's real work and real skill involved that you had to learn, but you started out with, as I read in your bio, this gut-wrenching fear, right? This first time taking your money, your cash. You got a baby on the way, and you have this gut-wrenching fear. I mean, that stops most people. I mean, it's the start that stops most people. Tell us about that moment when you had that fear, that doubt going into this. Well,
I really kind of just intellectualized it. I said, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I even said this to my wife, because she's like, I don't want to lose $3,000. I'm like, I don't either. I'm like, well, what's the very, very worst thing that can happen? The worst thing is that we own land. We own this asset that we don't have to protect. We don't have to maintain. No one can destroy it. And who knows? I mean, it could go up in value, because we all know that kind of, story of, development comes and, Jeb's a millionaire, right?
Sure.
So I thought that's the very worst case scenario. that's not so bad to own this asset. And then I started looking at things. Well, I could barter with it even if I can't sell it. I could, do all types of things with it that could be creative. So I thought, well, this isn't such a bad bet, right? There's a lot worse bets out there. And so she said, okay, I guess you're right. So let's try it. And that's really how I kind of thought about it in that sense was, what's the very worst thing that can happen? And is it that bad?
Have you ever heard of Tim Ferriss's fear setting exercise?
I not only did I watch the TED talk, I actually do that fear setting exercise. And actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I'm getting into Stoic philosophy based on him. And I just read a great book about that by William Irvine, A Guide to a Good Life. And what I've been doing is this negative visualization every morning. And it's really helped me with my gratitude exercise. But the negative visualization also sort of kind of just not only reinforces gratitude, but when bad things do happen, you're a little bit more prepared for it as well. But I know that's a little bit different than the fear setting exercise that Tim Ferriss talks about, where, you kind of problem solve it and you do the mental models. But I've been doing that as well. Interesting.
So I want to dive into both of those a little bit. So for the fear setting exercise for the listener, by the way, Tim Ferriss is committed to coming on the podcast. I'm pretty excited to have him on. He committed to me, and then I was in contact with his assistant, and she got back to me, and so she's gonna get this thing scheduled. So I'm pretty excited to have Tim on the show here. And so his idea of fear setting is basically, in a nutshell, it's okay. It's asking the question, what's the worst that can happen? And when you ask that question, because most of us don't even get started because of the fear, right? The fear, the doubt, the potential failure. And we kind of catastrophize in our head. But when you go, okay, what's the worst that could happen? Well, in your scenarios, what's the worst that could happen? Well, we lose $3,000 and we own a piece of land. Well, that's a pretty reasonable, thing to risk and venture $3,000 and you get an asset back. And there's other ones. Obviously, for you, the listener out there, you're thinking, well, my risk is different. It's I want to, I don't know, quit my job or ask somebody out on a date or whatever the case might be. What's the worst that can happen? Really going through that. And then, I think some of the steps, remind me if I'm wrong, Mark, but are sort of, how do you mitigate those? How do you minimize some of the worst case scenarios, right?
Yeah, exactly. You just write down, okay, if this actually did happen, well, how could I mitigate that happening? And it's a great exercise to go through. Absolutely. And you feel so much better. I think it frees up oceans of energy in a way that a lot of people don't talk about, because when you have all this stuff, this clutter in your head, right, I think it drains your energy. And then you start procrastinating because you have this sort of ambiguous dread or fear in your mind that's not really concrete. And then once you write it down on paper and you see it, and then you can oh, I can problem solve this, you become in a different state of mind. You become more motivated now. And now it's not about procrastination, it's about taking action, and then that leads you down that path of something good's going to happen either way, right? So you're going to get better at something by taking action as opposed to just kind of being in this fear state.
And that taking action starts with taking things from the subconscious level to the conscious level. And the way that I do that most is through journaling, is through writing, is just through putting this stuff, like you said, when you see it down on paper, you go, wait a second. Okay. So this is actually a real thing. It's a concrete thing. You're bringing it from subsurface, below the surface, where you can't really see it in the light of day and analyze it, to up above the surface, where you go, okay, so this is a real thing. It's a tangible thing. I can mitigate this problem. I can deal with this problem. Or I can say, I'm not willing to take that risk and actually get it off of your plate, get it out of your subconscious, so you're not consistently thinking about it. And it's interesting that you bring that up. And you also talked about negative visualization, Mark. Tell us a little bit about that, because I just watched a really cool video yesterday. It was all highlights of Conor McGregor talking about this is from way before he won the UFC title, and just talking about like how I'm going to win the UFC title. I mean, for years he had been saying it. He's like, I already have the title. It's already in my hands. It's already in my possession. I already have it. It's this whole idea of the law of attraction, and it's all very much about positive thinking. And I have this thing. So tell me about negative visualization.
Right. So I think the law of attraction, all that's, just fine. Right. But I think negative visualization has its place for gratitude and not taking anything in your life for granted, which we tend to do. Right.
Oh yeah.
We tend
Absolutely.
to focus on what we don't have as opposed to what we do have. And as a happiness sort of exercise, what else is going to make you happier than being grateful for the things you have? But, we go through life and, there's bumps in the road. You think about, why don't I have my neighbor's Tesla? Or, why do I have this relationship or whatever it is? You think of what you don't have. So when you do negative visualization, the Stoics talk about, okay, before you go to bed at night and you kiss your child, picture them as if this is going to be the last time you can kiss them. Yeah. Like there's no guarantee they're going to make it through the night, right? None of us have a guarantee we're going to make it through the day. Like it's true. Like we don't know when we're going to take our last breath. And it's a morbid sort of thought in a way, but I think once you embrace that fact that we're here for a very short period of time and you've got this life, like don't take it for granted. Like start doing what you want. And then, when you wake up in the morning and you see your child and they made it through the night, you're like, oh, like you don't take them for granted. Yeah. Like that relationship deepens in a way that wouldn't be possible. And, I don't sweat the small stuff as much when I have this negative visualization exercise where, it's like, well, what's really important to me in life? It's the quality of my relationships. That's really what makes me happy. So if my son comes home with a C on his math test, I'm not going to shame him for it. I'm going to be like, okay, what can we talk? Like, what happened? Like, what could we do next time so that we don't get a C? Like, and we talk about the effort. Do we talk about, look, can you be proud of that C? Did you do everything possible? And if you did, and you're just not good at math, or it's just not as easy, but you worked really, really hard, I'm proud of that C. But if you didn't study every night, you didn't go through the concepts, you didn't listen to a tutor or your teacher, then let's go back and let's problem solve that, but take the emotion out of it, in a way that sort of deepens the relationship. Because look, am I really going to get that upset over a grade in math when, I think to myself, well, that my son might not even be there the next day, right? Yeah. So it's that kind of thing, and I know it sounds morbid, but in a weird way, it does make you feel very grateful for all the things you have in your life.
What a poignant thing to talk about right now. I had just in last week's episode talked about gratitude. I talked about being grateful, and I talked about the idea that you can both want and be hungry for more and more success, but also be grateful and in the moment. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. And one thing I do right now, I've been using the 5-minute journal. And again, Tim Ferriss, he actually talks about this as well. But one of the things that I wrote down in terms of what I'm grateful for this morning, one thing I had a glass of water sitting next to me in front of the computer. And I said, and one of the things I wrote down, one of the 3 things you have to write 3 things you're grateful for every morning, physically hand write them out. And one was clean water. I just wrote clean water. It's like we're in America. This is so easy, but dozen or so episodes back, episode 109 with Justin Wren. So for the listener, if you haven't listened to that episode, that's a must listen before you listen to anything else. Episode 109 with Justin Wren. But anyway, it's an amazing, fascinating story. But anyway, one of the pieces of that story is he helps drill wells in Africa for communities who need clean water. And when they drill these wells and the water comes out, there's these videos on the website of people just celebrating. I've never celebrated when I've turned on my faucet. I've never celebrated. I just take it for such granted. But whenever I think about what could be, if something happens and our water supply is polluted or whatever the case might be, like if this could not be the case, but I all I need to do is walk over to the fridge and press a little button in the front and water comes out and it's cold and filtered. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny as I do the 5-minute journal too. Now I don't write it down. I have the app, and today, like I wrote down living in the United States peacefully. Like, how nice is it that we wake up every day?
I wrote that too. I actually wrote about living in a peaceful country.
Yeah, I mean, like there's no guns being shot at. I don't hear planes roaring overhead. Like, but if you live in Syria or you live in some other country in a war zone, that is your reality, and we just don't have it. We don't think about it. We just kind of get stuck in our lives, and that's why I think volunteering is so important, especially when you have young kids, and you are blessed, and with things. And I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy the things you have. You definitely should, but you should also be prepared, sort of mentally, to lose it all in a way. Yeah. And then kind of know, okay, you're going to be okay.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. This goes along with the fear-setting mindset too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, when we volunteer, like the kids get to see, oh my gosh, not everybody has a cell phone. Not everybody has nice shoes. Not everybody gets 3 square meals a day. Right. But then they kind of go back into their lives. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm really lucky. And without that, I wouldn't be able to, lecture them on it. They have to actually see it and experience it.
Sure. And one of the things you mentioned a few moments ago was the importance of relationships. And for the listener, I'm going to share a graphic in the action plan that I think you're going to like. So definitely get this action plan, jimharshawjr.com/action. But it is a compass. And in Reveal Your Path, in my program and my teachings, relationships is the first area where we set goals. It's the first and most important area where we set goals. Now, the 4 areas are relationships, self, health, and wealth. And wealth being the final one, the bottom one, the least important. And now when I say least important, some people kind of freak out because, they kind of know that relationships are supposed to be important, but we all really want more money, and it's okay to want more money. It's okay to want to be ridiculously rich and to have passive income, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. But they're all connected, if you have the balance, if you're living your life based on what's important to you, and which is interesting, Mark, because we're going to talk about this. Like you're making a lot of money, you have passive income. A lot of people, if they have passive income, they have a problem filling the void, right? Their life is out of balance, right? But when you have a life that's in balance and you know what the things that are important to you and relationships are in the right place in your life, then when you make more money, then your relationships get even better. You can spend more time. You can invest more in experiences with those who you love most. And when you're balanced and you make more money, then your health can be better because you can invest in, maybe you can buy more organic food or more healthy food or hire a trainer or whatever the case might be. But all these things are connected. It's so important to understand that relationships are number one, but all of these things are important in your life, and it's important to set goals in all of these areas of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could even make the argument, if you have really strong relationships, you're going to be happier, and happier people actually inevitably start making more money. Yes,
that's right. If your relationships are in balance, you're going to have more mental bandwidth. You're going to be happier. You're going to be able to have better sales calls and be less frustrated at work whenever you're trying to make money, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. It's like if you want to change the world, you got to change yourself first.
Yeah, it starts there. And so, Mark, what is passive income? What does that mean to you?
So, you can really make a strong argument. There's no such thing as passive income intrinsically, right? So, Jim, I give you $1 billion, and now you've got $1 billion that you didn't have to do anything to do, but you're still going to have to do something with $1 billion, right? It's not just totally passive. You're going to have to invest it. You're going to have to think about your investments. You're going to want to maximize that capital. So to me, passive income is doing that one thing and then having that income come on a recurring basis. So for me, that one thing is, selling an asset one time and then getting a recurring income every single month. But what's awesome about my way of doing it with raw land is that I don't have to deal with a renter. I don't have to deal with rehabs, renovations, or rodents. So if you want, I can kind of walk you through the model so you can really see it from a high level. So the first thing is, we got to buy the property correctly. And the way we do that is we look for people that are distressed in some way. They're advertising to us that they don't want that property and that they're distressed. So Jim, where do you live?
Charlottesville, Virginia.
Sure. Okay. So I see that you live in Charlottesville, Virginia, and then I go to the county treasurer and I say, oh my gosh, Jim owns 20 acres of land in Texas and he owes $200 in back taxes, but he lives in Charlottesville, Virginia. So you're already advertising to me that you no longer value that property because you haven't paid the taxes on it, right? If you valued it, you'd pay the taxes. So, and you live in Virginia, so you have no emotional connection to this raw land. So what I'll do is I'll look at the comparable sales for the last 12 to 18 months on those 20 acres in Texas. And let's say, for example, that it's $10,000. And then all I'll do is divide by 4. And what that does is that gets me what the Warren Buffett would call a 300% margin of safety. So the most I'll pay for that property is $2,500. And so what I'll do is I'll actually send you an offer of $2,500 for that 20-acre parcel that you own in Texas. Now, you owe back taxes. You don't know what you're going to do with the property. You haven't been out there in years. And you're like, okay, I'll accept, right? And so 3 to 5% of people actually do accept that quote-unquote top dollar offer that we offer. Then we go through a fancy term called due diligence.
So
just researching the property.
3 to 5%?
3 to 5%.
Okay,
correct.
so a lot of failure there. You've got to have persistence and you've got to push after you fail the first 5 or 10 times.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So think about this: for every 100, you're going to get 3 to 5 deals. Not bad. But yeah, if you can look the other way, like you're not getting 93.
Sure. Well, it's like baseball. If you can fail, 2/3 of the time and be considered good.
Yeah. Hall of Famer, right? So then we go through, we make sure that, Jim, you actually own the property. The back taxes are, only $200, not more than that. There's no liens or encumbrances on that property. And we go through like a checklist of things, right? There's something compelling about the property. You can find the property. And, then we actually buy it from you. And then now we own the property. And then we have a built-in best buyer, Jim, to actually buy that property right away. Do you know who it is?
No.
The neighbors. The neighbors. So we send out neighbor letters saying, hey, before we go to the open market, here's an opportunity to protect your view, increase your holdings, and control who your neighbor's going to be, right? So a percentage of the neighbors will buy it right away. If they don't buy it, then we'll go through our buyers list. If our buyers list passes, then we'll go to a little website you're probably not familiar with called Craigslist.
Heard of it.
It's the 10th most trafficked website in the U.S.
Yeah.
And then Facebook buy sell groups. And typically what we'll do is we'll make it irresistible from a pricing perspective. So if we go back to that 20-acre parcel that we just bought from you for $2,500, what we'll do is we'll create a car payment. So we'll get $2,500 down and we'll do $449 a month at 9% interest, right? Over, let's say, 10 years to sell that property. Well, now somebody will put $2,500 down and there's a car payment, $449 a month, the next 10 years, and they own 20 acres of land in Texas.
Wow.
And so you just continue to do that. So now I've got this monthly passive income of $449 a month coming in, but I'm never getting that call at 2 a.m. Hey, my roof is leaking.
Right.
Right.
I have a couple of real estate properties and that's what we get. Yeah.
Yeah. So the game then is, how many of these notes do I need before I'm completely free? And that is, okay, can I have enough passive income that exceeds my fixed expenses? And now I'm working because I want to, not because I have to. And so that's the game we play. And we just continue to do that again and again and again and just get better at it. So 90% of our business now is automated with software, all the way from sending out the letters to the back end. I created a SaaS product called geekpay.io that automates getting paid.
Wow. Cool. So you have this thing pretty systemized. You have a pretty down pat. And so for the listener, I will have all the links and everything so you can learn more about Mark and find his website and learn more about how you can, learn more about this stuff. I'll have that all in the action plan. And we'll also give Mark a chance to share that at the end of the show. Mark, can you tell me about a time? I ask all my guests to share about a time where they failed, right? A time where they were moving along, and maybe it was early on in the process. Maybe it was before this, you even started this company, or maybe it's while you've been going through this. But a time where you failed, and maybe that caused self-doubt. Because from the outside looking in, Mark, we look at somebody like you, and we go, man, that guy just got it figured out. Whether it was land investing or something else, this guy was going to hit it big, and he was going to be killing it no matter what. And we kind of don't see the struggle, the adversity, the setbacks that you had to face along the way. But can you share a story of failure and how you got through that?
Oh my gosh. So I've got so many stories of failure. A good one that kind of comes to mind because it talks about, ego, right? Because look, from 2001 to about 2008, anyone that was in real estate was making money. You could be a monkey and make money, right? Because it was just the market. So, I'd never been through a real estate cycle, and I think, I'm pretty smart now. I'm selling this raw land. I'm doing really, really well, and I see that this one area in Pennsylvania has 1,000 lots that's owned by the county, and there's liens on them from a property owners association in this beautiful development. It's gated. They've got 2 PGA rated golf courses. They have 3 lakes. They've got a restaurant. It's beautiful. There's $1 million homes in there. And so I go in there and I put on my suit and I fly in and say, look, you've got dead money here. The county's not getting their taxes. The property owners association isn't getting their association fees. If I buy these for $1 and I sell them to someone else, that's more money than you're getting right now. And so for 3 years, I negotiated and I took down all 1,000 lots and I bought them in 2007.
Oh,
all of them for maybe $50 a lot. So cheap. And then I started selling them. The county's happy. The property owners association is happy. I'm collecting for them their annual fee. And guess what happens in 2008?
Yeah, it all goes down the tubes.
It all goes down. I'm stuck with all this property. And I'm now, I made a promise to the county, the property owners association. And if I just had a mentor, if I just had somebody take a look at the deal and, talk to me about it, a separate set of eyes, instead of being so full of myself, they would have said, Mark, why are you taking down all 1,000 lots? Why don't you just do a takedown? Buy 10 at a time each month. And then as you sell those 10, buy another 10. But no, I thought, no problem. I'll buy them all. And I only sold, I don't know, maybe 10% of them. Right. And so that was the first deal where, even though financially I made $100,000 in the deal, when I factored in my time, which I think is more important than money, I broke even. And, from that point forward, I'm like, okay, I really need to get a business mentor to help me with this stuff.
So that's interesting. So for the listener, you've got to understand that there are experts out there who are good at things and they've failed, right? They've faced these situations where, like, man, I would have done this differently had I had a mentor, had a coach, or whatever. But failure happens, right? It's a normal part of success, right? Because you failed, like Mark, you didn't fold up shop and go home and quit and say, I just can't do this. It was just a lesson that you learned along the way. And the second point I want to make on that is, for anybody who's ever competed in a sport or played an instrument, you know that you have to have a teacher or a coach to guide you. Somebody who's been there, somebody who's done that, somebody who's failed, somebody who's succeeded, somebody who's coached and helped other people through that. Right? Like when we're an athlete, when I was an athlete, like, I knew the value of a coach, but we get out into the real world and we go, I can do this on my own. I don't need a coach. I can struggle through this and do this on my own. But it's like, what's at stake now? Like before it was, I don't know, the starting spot or the state championship or something like that. Now it's like your family, your livelihood, your hopes, your dreams, your wishes, it's everything, right? It's like the stakes are 100, 1,000 times higher, but so many people just decide, I can go this on my own. I don't need to hire outside help.
Yeah, it's so true. And, failure is such a great teacher, isn't it? As opposed to success.
Sure.
And unfortunately for me, I didn't have enough failure in the beginning, just because the market was so strong. And I it wasn't me. The market, I kind of got lucky, right? And then thank goodness I started to fail, and then I got better and better and started treating it more like a business and more seriously, creating systems, automation, a full team to kind of get myself out of the business and treat it like being an entrepreneur. Because before I was just, this solopreneur. And if I wasn't, the one buying the properties, selling the properties, I had solo-economic dependency. I wasn't making any money. I'm like, well, that's not the whole idea of being a business owner. Richard Schultz isn't, whipping up a Frappuccino right now at Starbucks, right? He's working on strategy. And so I started really, based on all that failure, started, looking at it with a better eye and obviously with the help of mentors, filling in the gaps of what I didn't know.
So Mark, for the listener who's out there and says, I like it, I'm interested, what's one action that they can take in the next, let's say 24 or 48 hours to start moving towards this dream of financial freedom and passive income?
I would say that my website's a good start because there's a lot of free information, and you can get our ebook, How to Avoid the Three Fatal Land Buying Mistakes. You can get our podcast every week, and you can get our passive income blueprint. And so from there, I think that's a really good start. It's just thelandgeek.com.
All right, excellent. I will have that link in the action plan, thelandgeek.com, but I'll have that at jimharshawjr.com/action as well. And Mark, do you have a favorite book or resource other than your ebook or your website, any other sort of book that's made an impact on you or that you recommend to others that you could recommend to the audience?
Oh my gosh. So I love books. I love audiobooks. I just finished A Guide to the Good Life by William B. Irvine. I love that book. And then along with that, Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday.
Great book.
And then I just finished a really interesting book called The Undoing Project about Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman, and how they sort of created behavioral economics and their partnership. And it really kind of hammers home how predictably irrational we are in our decision making. It's a really interesting book.
Yeah, Predictably Irrational. That's the name of a book actually that I read years ago. It's a great book.
Yeah. So these guys are like the godfathers of that. So this is by Michael Lewis, who I just an amazing author too. The Undoing Project, and then I'm right in the middle right now of Ray Dalio's book, Principles, Life, and Work, which I'm really enjoying.
Great. And for the listener, I'll have links to all of those in the action plan as well. Mark, can you recommend a tool or a resource or some kind of, maybe it's technology, maybe it's otherwise, maybe it's something like the 5-Minute Journal that helps you be more effective? Maybe it's Evernote. For me, it's Google Docs. I use that for everything. Was there something that you could recommend?
Well, being geeky, right? I love automation. So I'm going to give you my 3 favorite automation sites right now. It's ifttt.com.
Yeah.
That's more for personal. Zapier is, I'm in that every day, is zapier.com, zapier.com, and then airtable.com.
All right. I use the first two. Actually, I use Zapier a fair bit. And then I'll have links to the other ones in the action plan as well. Mark, thanks so much for making time to come on the show. Take a minute to promote yourself a little bit more. Again, your website and any other place where we can find you, follow you, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, I've got 3 podcasts on iTunes, the Land Geek podcast, the Best Passive Income Model podcast and the Art of Passive Income Model podcast, which is current right now. And then just thelandgeek.com, I think, is a really good start to go to.
Excellent. So for the listener, make sure you grab this action plan. He's got a lot of great stuff in here. I'm going to have all the tips and tactics we just talked about as well. Mark, thanks for making time to come on the show.
Jim Harshaw, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And for the listener, until next time, take the time to get clear on your goals and embrace failure as a stepping stone on your path to success.